Get lost, you idiot.
With his face turning bright red, Tony Walker suddenly flew into a rage and hurled a chair at me. Watching me shake with fear and surprise, he pointed at me and burst out laughing. Tony, who is the head of the sales promotion department at a major fast food chain subsidiary, is strutting around acting all high and mighty at the company's year-end party, where not only the employees from the main office but also executives and senior staff from the entire group are gathered. Tony claims he's got connections with the CEO, but as far as I know, that's a bunch of nonsense. His outburst has left everyone at the party in shock, but despite the chilly atmosphere, he keeps on insulting me. Just then, my wife, Emily, who could no longer stand by in silence, spoke up against Tony. Tony, who wasn't intimidated by Emily's bold attitude, was rendered speechless when another figure appeared. His face, which had been flushed with arrogance, turned pale. Tony, who had been riding high and acting selfishly, finally met his match. The price he paid for his actions was steep, but Tony seemed to have something even bigger at stake. My name is Magnus Walker. People often tell me it's an unusual name, and I tend to agree. It feels like it overshadows me, and I've felt that way since I was a kid. Despite having such a grand name, my life has been pretty ordinary. I'm 38 and in the prime of my career, so I'm busy every day, but my life is good. I've got a great wife and we just had a son, so everything's going smoothly. We named our son Maximus, which means the greatest, in honor of my own name. I still remember the surprised look on my wife, Emily's, face when I told her the name I'd come up with. I chose the name because I want him to grow up big and strong, but I wonder if he'll end up feeling like his name is too much for him, just like I do. Maybe my knack for naming things comes from my parents. I work at a major fast food chain. My parents had a lot to do with why I chose this job. They love to cook, and they always say that seeing people smile after enjoying a good meal makes them happy. Like them, there's nothing I enjoy more than seeing people leave with full bellies and big smiles. The company is doing well, and we're about to open a new location in a large shopping mall. This time, though, it's not a direct-owned store, but one operated by a subsidiary within the group. Since I had the day off, I decided to check it out, and I was surprised by how busy it was. Seeing the crowds on the first day reassured me that there was nothing to worry about, but then, suddenly, I heard someone yelling from the back of the store.
How can you not get something this simple right? Are you trying to ruin this place?
I wasn't the only one startled by the shouting. The customers inside all turned toward the voice, too. Just then, a young woman, who looked like she was probably an employee, ran off crying. Worried that something might be wrong, I peeked into the staff area, only to be met with a menacing glare from a big guy.
What's your problem? This isn't a freak show. Eat and get out.
The guy, who had taken off his jacket but was still in a suit, was clearly an employee, but he wasn't acting like someone who should be dealing with customers. Annoyed by his intimidating attitude, I tried to stand my ground. Aren't you an employee? Don't you think that attitude is a little off? The guy sneered at me, lightly snorted through his nose, then laughed and walked off. The rest of the day went by without any major issues. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I went back to the office to look into who that guy was. According to the employee records, his name is Tony Walker, and he's the head of the sales promotion department. His department doesn't usually have much to do with the actual stores, but it seems he was brought in for this event to help with the promotional activities for the new store. But there's no way that kind of customer service attitude is acceptable for someone working in this group. I decided to visit the store again on the final day of the opening campaign, and it was still bustling with customers. This store operations seemed to be going smoothly, but that wasn't what I was there to check. Sure enough, there was Tony at the register, looking annoyed and doing nothing to help anyone. He just stood there, looking bored, while the rest of the staff were clearly struggling to keep up with the crowd. I couldn't stand it any longer and spoke up.
Welcome. Hey, our customers here. Someone help them. Is this place full of useless people or what?
Even though the store was in chaos, Tony still didn't make a move to help. Aren't the other employees busy? Shouldn't you be helping them? I asked in disbelief. Tony clicked his tongue and then said something unbelievable.
Can't you see we're busy? If you're just here to mess around, get lost.
Not only did Tony treat me like a nuisance, but he also looked around to make sure no one was watching before forcefully shoving me out of the store. And as I stumbled and fell, Tony deliberately extended a hand to help me up.
Oh, are you okay, sir?
With a half smile on his face, Tony rushed over, making it look like I had just tripped on my own. I could hear the snickers around me. Unable to bear the cold stares from those around me, my face turned bright red with embarrassment, and I quickly ran away from the scene. A month after that humiliating incident, due to certain circumstances, I was transferred to a subsidiary within the group. And wouldn't you know it, I was placed in the same sales promotion department where Tony works. My job was to investigate why sales were declining, but I was pretty sure Tony was the reason. On my first day, I was shocked beyond words.
So you're the guy they sent over, huh? You've got a real broke look about you. You'd better be useful to me.
Tony assumed I was just some temp worker and looked down on me without even bothering to ask my name. Looking around, I noticed that all the employees in the department had pale faces, and the overall work efficiency seemed really low. The biggest problem was during the planning meetings. Everyone seemed to be tiptoeing around Tony and didn't dare speak up. The whole atmosphere was so strange that I couldn't help but feel uneasy, so I started asking the employees what was going on. But no one would say anything. They just looked scared. A new employee transferred in after me, but they always seemed anxious and showed no enthusiasm for the job. I couldn't just leave things as they were in this lifeless workplace. Having reached my limit, I decided to confront Tony directly, though I tried to be tactful about it. Tony, I think it'd be better if you took the employees' opinions into account more.
Who are you again? Whatever. More importantly, are you stupid for thinking some idiot like you could tell me what to do?
Tony didn't even bother to remember my name and was convinced that his opinion was the only one that mattered. There was no point in trying to reason with him. If anything, he retaliated by piling a mountain of pointless work on my desk. Some of the documents had nothing to do with my job, but all he said was, "Just do it." I ended up working overtime every day, losing the energy to even talk back, and eventually became mentally and physically exhausted. As the year-end approached, there were only a few days left until the big annual year-end party. This event was a grand affair every year, with not just employees from the main office but also executives and senior staff from all the group companies. Although I was currently working at a subsidiary, I was technically still part of the main office, so I had to attend. Tony, being in a managerial position, would probably attend as well. I knew it would be troublesome if I ran into him at the party, but I couldn't skip it due to my position. I figured if I got the chance, I'd expose Tony's bad behavior in front of the main office execs. But I knew that when faced with Tony himself, I'd probably lose my nerve and not be able to say anything. On the day of the big year-end party, I was feeling nervous and tried to stay out of sight, hanging out on the sidelines. When I ran out of my drink and headed to the bar, I accidentally bumped into Tony.
Hey, aren't you just a lowly temp? What are you doing here?
Tony was already visibly drunk, his face flushed red. I was told to attend a party, so.
Huh? This isn't the kind of place where a loser like you can just show up.
No matter how I tried to explain why I was there, the drunk Tony wouldn't listen and just kept treating me like dirt. As I sighed in frustration, Tony suddenly grabbed me by the collar, bringing his booze-smelling face uncomfortably close.
You don't know this, but I'm connected to the CEO. We're not even in the same league.
Maybe it was the alcohol talking, but I couldn't make sense of what Tony was saying. Whatever, just get your hands off me. When I brushed his hand away, Tony's face turned an even deeper shade of red, like a demon, as he furrowed his brow.
I'm important, you know.
Tony, drunk as a skunk, couldn't even form a proper sentence. Just as I thought this was my chance to slip away, Tony grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at me with all his might. The chair slammed into a table set up for conversation, sending food and drinks flying everywhere with a loud crash. If it had been just a few inches closer, I might have ended up in the hospital with serious injuries. The unexpected situation left me pale with fear, my body trembling. But Tony just smirked down at me, pointing and laughing loudly like something was hilarious.
Get lost, you idiot. Just having a loser like you around ruins the mood.
Looking around, I saw that not only the nearby employees but everyone in the room who had witnessed the commotion was pale and speechless. In the midst of this eerie atmosphere, Tony's laughter echoed throughout the venue. Then, my wife, Emily, who had been standing a bit further away, came over and, angrier than I'd ever seen her, confronted Tony.
Hey, who do you think you are? Clearly, you don't know who he is.
Emily stood confidently, hands on her hips, glaring down at Tony. But Tony, not understanding the situation, leered at her from head to toe with a creepy grin. Emily, who's a famous model on TV and in magazines, is stunningly beautiful, with a slender figure that anyone would envy. Drunk and lecherous, Tony started moving toward her.
Hey, aren't you that famous model, Emily? Did you come as a guest for the party?
Could you stop breathing your disgusting breath on me and stay away?
Emily's disgust was clear, but Tony, as usual, didn't listen and kept trying to touch her inappropriately. Then, Emily's slap landed squarely on Tony's face with a satisfying slap, sending him crashing to the ground.
What the hell was that for? Do you even know who I am? I'm Tony Walker, with the same last name as the CEO.
What are you even talking about?
With the CEO backing me up, I can deal with a woman like you any way I want.
Emily and I both looked at Tony, confused by his nonsensical rant. Tony, what are you even saying?
I don't know what you're trying to get at, but if you keep treating my husband like this, you'd better be ready to face the consequences.
Tony's eyes widened in shock at Emily's words.
Has been. You're married to this loser.
Tony couldn't believe it. his face twisted in confusion. Just then, a man in a luxury suit stepped between us with a puzzled expression.
What are you guys doing here?
Paul, the CEO. There's someone here who shouldn't be. Get rid of this loser right now.
Tony, who had been sitting on the floor, started babbling incoherently, his face drenched in sweat. But the CEO just frowned and then took my hand.
What are you doing here, Magnus, the new CEO? It's almost time for your inaugural speech. You need to be more composed.
Sorry, Dad. I was just dealing with a little issue. The man in the expensive suit standing before me was Paul Walker. He's my father and the current CEO of this major fast food chain. He's set to step down soon and take on the role of chairman, with me slated to become the new CEO. This year's big year-end party was also meant to be the event where my promotion to CEO would be officially announced. Being the CEO of a major fast food chain is a heavy burden for me. So, whenever I have to speak in public, I plan to leave it to the vice president, whom my father trusts the most. But my father insisted that I attend this year's party to fulfill my responsibilities as the new CEO, although I never expected it would turn into such a fiasco. As my father smiled and gripped my hand firmly, my wife Emily, who had been wearing a strained smile, stood up and brushed the dirt off my clothes. In this suddenly peaceful moment, I glanced over at Tony. He was shaking uncontrollably, his once red face now pale as a ghost.
What? You're the CEO. How? Why?
Tony, clearly rattled, stammered as he broke into a cold sweat, slowly scooting back on his rear like a villain from a comic book. As Tony tried to make his escape, Emily, her smile tight with irritation, spoke up.
By the way, you mentioned something earlier about being related to or knowing the CEO, but there's no way someone like you is part of the Walker family.
What are you talking about, Emily?
Hearing the full story from Emily, my father's expression darkened as he glared at Tony like a demon.
What do you think you're doing, claiming to be a part of the Walker group when you have no connection to our family?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Terrified by the menacing glares from both my father and Emily, Tony's bravado crumbled and he quickly dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floor as he repeatedly apologized. I had transferred to Tony's department as part of my preparation to take over as CEO, and the results were more than I had expected. One of my hobbies is watching foreign TV shows and documentaries, and my favorite is a famous program where the CEO disguises themselves as a janitor or part-time worker to uncover hidden issues within the company. Officially, I was supposed to be handling international business, but behind the scenes, I was visiting various subsidiaries within the group to investigate their internal issues, finding numerous problems and areas for improvement. In short, I wanted to improve the company by playing a little game of undercover boss, inspired by my favorite show. What I discovered while working there was that struggling subsidiaries within the group always have room for improvement. This time, I had taken the opportunity to work under Tony, but the situation was far worse than I had imagined, and I got caught up in it myself. Tony's department was in a state far worse than any other. When I revealed that my transfer was actually part of a surprise investigation, Tony's face went from pale to ghostly white. Tony, you understand what this means without me having to spell it out, right?
What do you mean? I've been working diligently. I haven't done anything that bad, right?
Tony began making excuses, so selfish it was almost laughable. Eventually, He even tried to blame everything on his supposedly incompetent subordinates, leaving me utterly speechless. I understand your perspective, Tony, but you should go home now. Desperate to escape the painful stares of everyone around him, Tony bolted for the exit. But in his haste, he tripped over his own feet and crashed into a table full of food. With dishes overturned and food covering his head, Tony's clumsy fall brought a wave of laughter from the other attendees. Soon after, the branch manager from Tony's subsidiary rushed over to me, sweating profusely as he was repeatedly apologizing. As I glanced toward where I felt a gaze, I saw Tony staring at me with a face twisted in fear. Noticing Tony's panic, the branch manager, still lowering his head, shot a sideways glare of resentment at Tony. Tony, who had collapsed in fear, was so terrified that he lost the strength in his legs. He mustered his last bit of strength and managed to leave, crawling away. The next day, I showed up to work as usual, acting like nothing had happened. Good morning. The employees in the department, as always, returned my greeting without much enthusiasm. However, Tony, who had learned my true identity the day before, was so startled that he knocked the papers off his desk onto the floor and collapsed on the spot.
Good morning.
Tony stammered, looking as if he had just seen a ghost. The employees, puzzled by Tony's odd behavior, glanced over at him with curiosity. Tony, are you okay?
I'm good.
Tony's face was pale, drenched in sweat, and he was trembling uncontrollably. His voice shook, and he was in such a panic that he couldn't even form a coherent sentence. But none of the employees who had suffered under Tony's tyranny over the years offered him any comfort. Instead, soft chuckles could be heard from various corners of the office as they watched him cower in fear. Suddenly, I noticed an unfamiliar envelope among the papers that Tony had dropped on the floor. When I checked the contents, I found that it was a resignation letter. Tony, what's this? Hearing murmurs of "not again" from the surrounding employees, my suspicions turned into certainty.
It's a resignation letter from one of the employees who recently left.
I had heard rumors, but it turned out that Tony had been forcing employees who couldn't tolerate his abuse to resign and processing them as voluntary resignations. He even had the resignation documents mailed to him so that he could submit them himself. In doing so, he changed the payment details so that the severance pay was transferred to his own account. Tony, this is a serious problem. You shouldn't expect to continue working here after this. Even as I expressed my exasperation, Tony fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness, but there was no way he could be pardoned so easily. After reporting Tony's misconduct to the branch manager, including the issue of the resigned employees, the branch manager turned pale and began shaking as well. Although I felt sorry for the branch manager, I had no choice but to accept his demotion and pay cut for allowing Tony's tyranny to go unchecked. Less than a week later, Tony was officially dismissed for gross misconduct. Additionally, Tony was ordered to return the severance pay to the employees and compensate the company for the damages he caused. Tony's dismissal revealed one of the long-standing mysteries. According to interviews with the employees, Tony had been claiming to be a relative of my family simply because we shared the same last name, even before he became a department head. While it's true that having the same last name by coincidence didn't change anything, I was unaware that it had been exploited in this way until now. My father, busy with his duties as CEO, likely hadn't noticed either. I also blame myself for not being more visible. As childish as it may seem, it was apparently effective enough to help Tony land his position as a department head, at least partly due to the surname connection. With the compensation he owed, Tony lost not only his severance pay but also all his savings. Having lost not just his position as a department head but his job altogether, Tony's wife filed for divorce. The divorce was finalized, and now Tony supposedly lives a modest life on his own. Since then, I haven't heard much about Tony, until one day I was surprised to come across his name in an unexpected place. I received a report about an incident of dining and dashing at a store in a rural area. The culprit tried to flee immediately but tripped over his own feet as he started running and was arrested on the spot. That culprit turned out to be Tony. The unfortunate incident involving Tony quickly became the talk of the company. The name Tony Walker, once a former department head, took on a life of its own and eventually became the subject of jokes everywhere. A few months later, after I was officially appointed as the new CEO, the first thing I focused on was making the company more transparent to prevent anything like Tony's situation from happening again. Despite everything that happened, Tony became a sort of cautionary tale, and in that sense, he indirectly helped the company. After revising the training manuals based on the issues I uncovered while visiting the various stores operated by our group subsidiaries, the company's performance began to improve steadily. We decided to implement the new manual in the newly opened stores. The manual worked well, but the employees were overwhelmed by the unexpected rush of customers. Even though I joined in to help, it was so busy that I could hardly keep up. But surprisingly, despite the large number of customers waiting outside, not a single complaint was filed. Curious about how smoothly everything was running inside, I went to check the situation outside. There, I found a middle-aged security guard engaging with the waiting customers. This guard was keeping both children and adults entertained, making the long wait enjoyable for them. When I approached the guard to express my gratitude, I was shocked to realize that it was Tony, looking a bit worn but unmistakably him.
Oh, hello, Magnus. It's busy today, isn't it? Don't worry about outside. I've got it covered.
Thanks to Tony, the grand opening day went off without a hitch. I wanted to thank him after we finished cleaning up, but he had already left, and I couldn't find him anywhere. Throughout the entire grand opening campaign, Tony worked tirelessly as a security guard without taking a single day off. On the final day, when I finally managed to thank him, Tony, now a completely different person, talked with a humble attitude that I could hardly believe was the same man I once knew.
I'm truly sorry for the trouble I caused before. It may not make up for it, but I'm glad if I could help in some way.
Tony had transformed so much that even I, who knew his past behavior, couldn't recognize him as the same person. Feeling genuinely happy, I couldn't help but smile in surprise. Would it be possible for us to assign you as the security guard for the next new store we open? Tony, looking embarrassed, smiled slightly and bowed deeply before leaving without saying a word. As I watched Tony's now confident figure walk away, an idea came to mind. I decided to incorporate Tony's hospitality, which I had witnessed firsthand, into the company's training manuals. I'm confident that Tony's efforts, now as a changed man, will bring smiles to many more customers in the future.